Hello, welcome to the RTE Soccer Podcast, Daily World Cup edition. Mikey Stafford, joined by former Ireland international Keith Treacy and Rob Wright of RTE Online Sport to discuss a couple of more dramatic World Cup quarterfinals. We've been well served by the last eight, I have to say. It's literally just finished. France 2, England 1, and Kylian Mbappe didn't quite have the impact we expected, Keith, but his reaction to Harry Kane's penalty miss seems to be going viral. His gleeful smile and laugh as soon as the ball went over the bar. It's, as you just said before we came on air, poor old England, even when it's not penalties, it's a penalty.
Yeah, it all come down to the penalties again, didn't it? They were fearing. If they could take penalties now, they'd rip your hand off because they've been thrown out of the tournament. But I have to say, from the outside looking in, the English, this will hurt them. This will be devastating for them. But like I say, from the outside looking in, analysing that, they were largely the better team. I have to be honest. I thought the first 15, maybe 20 minutes, France were the better team. They were on top. After they scored their goal, which was a good finish by Tuchemeni, but I thought Saka was fouled in the build-up. I thought the referee should have got that right. He wasn't, very far away from it. He told Saka to get up, so there was too long in between it to go back for it in VAR. So I understand that, but it should have been given in real time. It wasn't a hard call. I think the ref got quite a couple of decisions wrong. I think England could have even had a third penalty. I think it might have been outside, but for it not to be even given as a free kick was pretty much baffling for me. But yeah, look, from the outside looking in, England, although it's the quarterfinals, they've been thrown out. I think they've probably lost to the eventual winners of the World Cup. So there's no shame in that. And they gave it a really, really good goal. And Giroud scored a really good goal, but the Tuchemeni one, you hold your hands up, them sort of things can happen. Somebody unleashes something from 30 yards out. It goes through Bellingham's legs. It's one of them. It's just unlucky, but yeah, I thought it was England. England were a better team, and I think France will be happy just to get through that now.
Yeah, Rob, they'll play Morocco, obviously, who beat Portugal 1-0. We'll discuss that game in a while, but one thing we have in common is anger at referees. There's a lot of, we'll discuss the Portuguese conspiracy theories about an Argentinian refereeing a match when they're still in the tournament, which is a new one on me that they'd be complaining about that. But Wilton Sampaio of Brazil was a referee this evening, and well, a lot of people in Ireland aren't naturally predisposed to being sympathetic to our nearest neighbours. The Saka foul definitely was the foul of the build up to the goal. Did look of such a clear foul that should have been picked up. VAR couldn't have got that, and I think the Harry Kane, the third penalty shout Keith mentions is, I think because it was outside the box, VAR won't rule for a free kick. They'll only rule for a penalty. So VAR might have said it was a foul, but they weren't going to go back for a free kick. But the Saka, the foul in the build up to the first goal did. If I'd be irate about that if I was an England fan.
Yeah, and look, it possibly was a foul, but there was an awful lot of time between that foul and the goal. And, at a certain point, you have to say, okay, play carries on. You have to continue. They had chances to clear it. They had chances to stop it. Yeah, I think France will feel they got away with it there now, I think they were up against a team probably most well equipped to hurt them. They won't fear Morocco. But it's kind of a case of, England were able to exploit France where they were most weak in the middle of the park. And for, a good hour of the game, they dominated the middle of the park. There was some strange decisions from Southgate, I think, when England were on top. I don't get really why he took off Saka. England looked terrified of him. Henderson was helping to control things in the centre. He brought on Sterling, and I think it was Mount for him. It was, yeah. And I don't think either of them added anything. And it kind of gave the incentive back to France a bit there. But yeah, it's Morocco next to them. And yeah, I think they'll feel they can get better at them, and Argentina, Croatia in the final. It's all lined up for them.
Yeah, it is looking good for them, Keith, but they'll have concerns. Kyle Walker's heat map will be an interesting one to see. He just as soon as England went over the halfway line, he started running backwards. It was bizarre to see, but he did a job. And Morocco, we know, have very, very, very good defenders. They'll look at that and say, this guy can be shackled, and if he is, Now there was still wonderful performances. Griezmann was the recreation of Griezmann as a centre midfielder is astounding to see. But he had a great game. Chimeni, obviously, apart from giving away a brain dead penalty, had a good game. They do have other options, but this idea that Mbappe is unstoppable, I think Kyle Walker went a long way to disproving that.
Yeah, well, I played with Kyle Walker at Sheffield United just
Hmm.
before he got bought at Spurs, and once or twice I had a couple of races against him, and believe me, he's absolutely electric over 10 yards, and he's one of them that keeps getting quicker and quicker as he goes. He doesn't just reach his potential and then top out. He just keeps getting quicker as he goes. So I was really interested to see that. I think there was one time Mbappe actually tried to run him, and he did just get ahead of him, but it was really, really tight. There wasn't a lot in it. But to see that Mbappe didn't fancy running down the wing was just enough. But to be fair, I don't think Mbappe will come up against a right back like Kyle Walker every week. Even Hakimi at Morocco, very, very good right back, very good shape, will keep people under wraps. But pace is the one thing that kills people. And Hakimi, like I say, an excellent right back, hasn't got the pace of a Kyle Walker, so could struggle up against an Mbappe. But yeah, like Mbappe's biggest weapon is his pace. We all know that. And if you take that away from him, put him up against somebody who's even 80, 90% as quick as him, then I think Mbappe will struggle. And he struggled to get into the game. He really did. And the Saka penalty all comes from Mbappe not tracking back as well. Because Hernandez has left 2v1. Saka and Henderson work it well. Saka comes in and gets taken down. That's all because Mbappe is standing on the halfway line thinking about going forward. So there is ways to hurt this French team, but there's ways to hurt the Argentinian team. There's ways to hurt the Moroccan team. There's ways to hurt the Croatian. So this, for me, it's been a brilliant World Cup. I'm loving every minute of it, and you just can't take your eyes off it. And boy, I don't want to keep going back to the referee. It's just popped into my head. I'm looking at the Mason Mount penalty. That was a stonewall penalty, and the ref didn't give that in normal time either. So the ref was really, really poor. But it comes down to Harry Kane missing that penalty. They did have enough chances.
Yeah,
just about Walker there, though, I kind of feel that they sacrificed him to stop Mbappe, but they really missed his pace. They had I know Saka and Foden, they don't have the same explosive pace that he has. And that was one of the things that England really were missing, and it's a gamble. Do you give that up to stop Mbappe? They probably could have done with that today.
It was interesting though, Keith, that without Walker going forward, the idea that Henderson was going to be Walker's kind of assistant in shackling Mbappe, obviously he was at times, but it was more interesting that he was constantly showing up beside Saka as an overload of Hernandez, because as you say, the English probably gambled that Mbappe wasn't going to be tracking back, so the French left flank was their best route to attack.
Yeah, I think you could see it from open play a lot. They would probe down their left, they would recycle it back, and then once Mbappe gets disinterested, they play the ball out to the right. They try and get Bellingham over there, Henderson or Saka, and they would create overloads because Rabiot doesn't want to come out of that midfield. He doesn't want to come out protecting the back four. So England started to work it really, really well. And I feel for the English. I really do. When you're up against the world champions, you're thinking, we're going to need a bit of luck here today. For as well as there was so many good performances in there for England. I don't think Phil Foden turned up for as good as he is. I'm a huge fan of his at Man City. I don't think he was great. Bellingham, he's only 19, so I'd be very, very reluctant to point any sort of finger at him. But for what he's done in the tournament already, I don't think he reached the heights of what he could have. But all the question marks I had over England before the game were John Stones and Harry Maguire, and they were excellent. I know Giroud gets ahead of Maguire, but in a 90-minute game, France have huge threats. So to limit them to 3 shots on target in 90 minutes of football, when you see the class of talent they have on there, was a really good showing. But yeah, I think it just hurts, doesn't it? It's going to hurt the English. And to be fair, it's hard. I'm not saying I backed the English from the start, but going into this, it was either the English or the French. Which one do you go up for? Because I know we don't really like the French after the Henry handball, and the English one, is a tough one anyway. So yeah, it was whoever wins, it wins.
Yeah, it's true. And Rob, it is. It's another. I made the joke on Twitter, that, Gareth Southgate and Harry Kane both making dough out of pizza ads.
Get that Pizza Hut money.
Yeah, but it's such a painful way to go out of a tournament. And, you just wouldn't like the one English guy you kind of bank on scoring a penalty. And I do wonder if the fact it was Hugo Lloris and it was a second penalty against Hugo Lloris, he's like, okay, Hugo won't guess my first one, but he'll have a good chance. He'll probably nobody's faced more Harry Kane penalties in their life than Hugo Lloris, so he probably said it was probably kind of trying to second guess himself and second guess Lloris, and
Absolutely.
maybe that was what happened.
And you
Try
can
to get
see,
into
I
his
mean,
head.
the first penalty was a wonderful penalty. But Lloris, if you look back on it, even though he went the wrong way, he knew where Kane was looking to place it because he dived high. He went up high into his left corner. And Kane obviously knows, okay, I've done that in the first one. He's going to go high again. He went a bit too high, himself. So yeah, there must be a psychological element there against your club goalkeeper. You kind of face him every day in training. That's the man you practice your penalties against. There's probably no one better in the world to stop penalties from Harry Kane than Hugo Lloris. And yeah, maybe he just outthought himself because it was a disastrous penalty. It really was. It was Roberto Baggio kind of stuff nearly.
Yeah, Keith, give us the pros insight on that. Then you're practicing penalties. Everybody has a preferred penalty, but then obviously you want to broaden your repertoire because you don't want to be known for being the guy who always puts the bottom left, always goes down the middle. So you're playing against a club goalkeeper. They will have a good idea of what your preferred penalties are in a pressure situation, I guess.
Yeah, of course you will. It's only natural you would have come up against him on the change on the training ground. And when he took the first one, I thought, Lloris will know. Second time, it's always a gamble. So, look, in hindsight's a great thing. Could he have looked at a Foden or maybe a Declan Rice, whoever would have fancied it, and say, lads, I don't want to test me luck here too much because he's my club goalkeeper. And it would have. He obviously overthought it because you've never seen Harry Kane lean back and just smash a ball as hard as he can, and that for me was just pure nerve. So. But to be fair, in the first one, the referee blew the whistle and it looked like it startled him and cut him off. So, and he addressed the ball again. He tied his laces. He took a step back, took a breath, and I thought that was real maturity. He knows what he's doing. He's taking his time. He's not going to rush. And he put that one away. And the second one, to lean back and just blast it like that, it's so un-Harry Kane-like. And I think it was just pressure. In hindsight, could he have looked at one of the other English lads and say, any of you fancy this? But hindsight's a great thing, and you're never going to get a striker to willingly walk away from a penalty.
Yeah, and just the narrative of it, Rob, it was like the first penalty equaled Wayne Rooney's England scoring record. The second one was to break it and, bring England to, potentially to extra time in a World Cup quarter final. And then he misses it. It's just, it's just so wonderfully, terribly English.
Yeah, and Spursy, as well. You get away from that as well. Yeah, look, it's going to haunt him. It's not going to be something to get over from. I don't think I suppose the tabloids don't have the same power and the same sway that they used to back when, Southgate missed his, and it'll be less of a crucifixion by the media than other players who've missed penalties like that have faced. But yeah, he'll definitely feel it. It'll haunt him. And yeah, it's not going to be an easy one for him to get over.
Yeah, a lot of interest now, I guess, Keith, in whether Gareth Southgate will stay on. With a lot of people predicting even if they'd won the World Cup, he'd go because what more could he do? And now, semi-final, final of the Euros, quarter-final. It is still a very young team. Like the players clearly like him, but I suppose any manager, even international, where you're not seeing the players that much, I guess you kind of get worried. Your message might be getting a bit stale. It'll be interesting to see what he decides to do.
Yeah, it will be. I think there's still, like you say, the bulk of them are still very, very young, and he seems to be one of these managers that he gets a really close relationship with players. And you look at like Saka, Foden, Bellingham, all really young and in the starting 11. He seems to have a great relationship with Mason Mount as well. He seems to get on very well. So that's the core group of young attackers there. And, I'm not so sure. I think the FA might want to keep him. I'm not so sure Gareth will want to stay on because, like you say, what more can he do with this squad? He's reached the semis and a final and now the quarter final. Yeah, I'm not so sure how much Gareth Southgate thinks is left in him in the England squad. So maybe they will try and freshen up with a new manager. But look, if they were to stick with Gareth Southgate, I have to be honest, I'd be happy enough. And I think there'd be the core group of players in that dressing room would be happy as well, because you have to go back to what England were like before Gareth Southgate came in the door. It was pretty laughable, some of the results that were coming in. So yeah, the grass is not always greener. I know they want to make that next step, but going to just another manager for the sake of it is not always a good thing. So I'd love to see them keep faith in him, give him another couple of year deal, and maybe even then go to the next World Cup with him, and see how he gets on there.
Yeah,
I think the thing is, sorry, they
go
lack
on.
of options. You kind of look at who's out there and who's available. Like the FAA and the English media and the whole people in control there, they want an Englishman in control of the team. And there's not too many options. They're not going to bring Sean Dyche in.
Well, I think Eddie Howe would be probably the natural one doing so well at Newcastle, but he's not ready yet. So I think it would be natural to give Southgate another couple of years, another 4 years until the next World Cup, and then it all being well, if Newcastle are the top 6 club by then, I think it'd be natural then to bring Eddie Howe in, a young manager as well coming through. But at the minute, he's not ready. But that's in an ideal world. That's if Gareth Southgate even wants to stay on, So there's question marks over that as well.
Yeah, and I suppose the guy on the other side is, kind of proof of what longevity and a bit of trust can do. Deschamps in that job for a very long time now, and he's obviously delivering. Particularly World Cup seems to be his speciality. Keith, they're playing Morocco next. We'll get out to Morocco shortly, and then the winners of Croatia and Argentina. France do look the most complete side, but as I think we've noted a couple of times here on the podcast, probably the best 11. But one substitution made in the 79th minute by Deschamps does speak to the fact that he perhaps doesn't have the bench that he would have if he wasn't decimated by injury. So an injury to a key player for France in the semi-final would change the perspective quite a bit, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And even if an injury to Kylian Mbappe, I know France they're not a one-man team, but if you keep Mbappe quiet, you do restrict France on what they can do. Giroud is a very good player, can cause a problem. So can Griezmann. Griezmann was very good tonight. Dembele huffed and puffed, didn't do an awful lot. But the one thing I think where France can be dominated is Rabiot and Tchouaméni. I really like Tchouaméni. I think he'll go on to be a world-class footballer, but he's still earning his stripes at this level right now. I think he can be found out. Rabiot, I don't think he reads the game well enough defensively. He wants to spring forward and make passes, but defensively down the sides, I think he can be got at. I think dominated in the midfield. And I think Ugo Meccano, the centre-half, Kane made him look very, very ordinary tonight. I think he got very tight once or twice, could have given a penalty away, was rolled at numerous times. So he's somebody that people might try and pinpoint. I think Morocco might try and play on him as well. And in the middle, Morocco will they will really make a nice and tight and narrow in there, and they'll give up the wings, which is where Mbappe is going to be. So it'd be fascinating to see which way Morocco will go about it. But yeah, there's holes in the French team that, that there's weaknesses in there. So although Morocco will be thinking this is a big, big game, they will also be thinking we can spring out and hold France.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Rabiot, I have to say, but maybe it's the guy next to him making him look good. Rob, Griezmann, one of FIFA's new Arsene Wenger stats came up, and Griezmann was leading on 63 at the end of the game of pressures made ahead of Tchouaméni, Henderson, and all the other central midfielders who are supposed to be doing that. It's kind of remarkable the role he's playing for France now, and how good he is at it.
And he was key for them in the first half. He was really getting in there, breaking up everything, and really a bit of the practical foul in there. He was he knew when to put the boot in, when to stop. He got booked just before half time, and that had to stop. And you could see that really changed the pattern of the play in the second half. He wasn't the one getting in there. He wasn't breaking up the play as much, and that was when England really started to dominate through the centre. So, if they can keep him doing that role against Morocco, without getting caught and getting pinged for those cynical fouls, then yeah, they'll do well there.
Yeah. Okay, but we'll move on to the first game, which was England-France was always likely to be the game to grab the headlines today, but in reality, the first game is probably more significant, Keith. The first African team to make a World Cup semi-final, and you can just imagine the scenes in Morocco to be, as I said earlier, to be at whatever the Moroccan equivalent of the Walkinstown roundabout is tonight. I'd say now would be something else. But they're a fascinating team. They've conceded one goal, and that was to Canada, and it was an own goal. So against Croatia, Belgium, Portugal, all these top level European teams they played, they haven't conceded a goal and haven't really looked like conceding a goal. You look at their defense, Keith, and you know what is it that they're doing? They've got very good defenders, obviously, but it's more than that. It's a system that's been put in place by a coach who's not there very long, and they are absolutely baffling some of the best attackers in the world.
Yeah, it's just I don't want to oversimplify it and say it's work rate and desire, but it's a huge chunk of that. So many times today against Portugal, you're seeing somebody would come flying in to make a tackle in the midfield. They'd get skipped past, and they don't just jog back and think, oh, well, he's beat me, so somebody else needs to do it. They turn and they sprint back. It means everything to them. And when you get players who recovery runs are sprints, that sounds very simple, but players don't sprint when they're recovering. And if they do, you will get a second bite at the cherry. And every time somebody flies into a tackle, their mate is backing them up. And like I say, there's no real superstars in the team. I know Hakimi's there and Ziyech is there, but the ego seemed to be left, in Morocco. They all work to a certain standard. They all worked really hard. Ziyech had to come off. Boufal had to come off with cramp. They were all cramping up towards the end, but they worked so hard for each other. And the first thing the manager did when he got the job was he got Hakim Ziyech on the phone and told him he wants him back in the Moroccan team. And yeah, for the first African team to get to the semi-finals of a World Cup is huge. They did it with only 27% possession, which is excellent. They suffered out of possession with Spain. They were prepared to do it against Portugal as well, and they gave them the wings and they said, right, put the ball into the box and we'll defend it from there. There was absolutely no problem. And Aaron Matt in the midfield as well. The midfield generally just sits in there telling people what to do. And when he has to go and do something, he goes and does it with real authority himself. And there's a lot to like about Morocco. Although they're not huge attacking flair, probably not pretty on the eye, but to sit down and watch them and analyse them, you get real joy out of them. They're a real joy to sit down and analyse.
Yeah, and Rob, they do something which I think kind of makes them a little bit unique in terms of a team that plays a low block, or whatever the phrase is we use now. A team that sits in and invites on pressure. When they counter, they're not playing long balls. They're playing very courageous short passes through the attacker, through the Portuguese attackers, which is then finding somebody in a bit of space inside their own house who can then kind of drive forward and look for whoever might be breaking outside them in front of them. It's ballsy the way they kind of spring out of defense.
Yeah, they move the ball really quick on the counter, and like you say, it's not just long balls. It's it's the likes of Amrabat, Ziyech, Hakimi. They're all kind of passing through the lines. And they've been excellent at it. They really have. It's got to be so difficult to defend against. The later it goes as well, they're getting tired legs, and they've just been facing a wall. And you can see against Portugal, they were getting more and more chances as Portugal got desperate. But there's kind of been a bit of there's a tactical flexibility to their block as well. Against Portugal, they played and they moved up the pitch. They were about 5 meters higher up than they were against Spain. They were kind of sitting in deeper, to counter that pass, and they were pushing up on the defenders more so against Portugal, because he knew that that's where they kind of build from. So there's a real tactical flexibility in that, and it's going to be a fascinating game now next up.
It was a hell of a goal, Keith. There was only one goal in the game. It was a very unusual cross. It was just kind of hooked in, looped in. It was kind of a hopeful cross, but Yusuf and Nezri, he was the right distance away. He could sprint at it, and it was just a tremendous. Now the keeper didn't cover himself in glory, but the leap, it was Ronaldo-esque how high he got up to head that ball home.
Yeah, it was a great leap, and you took the words out of my mouth. The keeper did not cover himself in justice whatsoever. Diego Costa, he comes out, and he's trying to punch it, but Ruben Diaz is there. The striker is El Naziri. He's 2 foot above the two of them. He was never ever getting there. He just gets caught in no man's land, and in the end, he's heading the ball into an empty net. But I wouldn't say it was a smash and grab. Although Portugal had all of the possession, they only had 3 shots on target. Morocco had 3 shots on target during the game as well. So in terms of chances, it was very, very tight. If anything, Morocco squandered a chance to make it 2-0. The goalkeeper made a great save on the break. So Morocco were full value for it. So people get bogged down with the possession stat and think, oh, Portugal were unlucky, they battered them. They really didn't batter them. They struggled to create anything from open play. It was balls into the box, set pieces, half chances here. João Felix had a half volley from the edge of the box. He maybe could have done better with, but no glaring chances. That maybe the Pepe header from 6 yards out towards the end, you're thinking he should have scored, but I think Morocco were full value for it. And you know, I'd write them off at their peril in the semi-final, because they're a very, very motivated team and they're very well backed over in Qatar.
Yeah, oh, they are. There seemed to be a fair bit of trouble getting into the stadium this evening. There seemed to be people turning up without tickets, which was leading to kind of slow security checks. So the stadium was depressingly like about half full when the match started, but they got in the end and they had something to cheer about. Rob, we wouldn't want to get to dwell on him for too long, but obviously Ronaldo, he got to come on. He did have one pretty decent chance. He got off it. It wasn't a bad shot. Wasn't the best shot he's ever hit in his life, but he did have an impact. And then at the end, to kind of see him going down the tunnel in tears. I couldn't tell with the sound off. I couldn't tell if he was crying or laughing. It was a strange kind of. I'm gonna assume, you know, he was crying, but it looks like the end of his international career. I mean, you could say the end of his top level football career if, you know, he ends up in Saudi Arabia. Not how he wanted it to end, but I suppose few careers end in a glorious fashion.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of like it's come, you know, it's that old story, you know, how did it collapse, you know, very slowly and then all at once. He from the falling out at Manchester United, from the spot with his Portuguese manager, you know, it's all just going. It's the end of his career, and he, more so than Messi, hasn't really been able to find a way to kind of reinvent himself. You know, Messi's kind of turned into this deeper lying playmaker. Ronaldo, he's always relied on his kind of strength, his power, his pace. And when those things go, there's not too much you can do about that. So you can see he's not the player he was. He's nowhere near it. And he wasn't the big kind of scary prospect coming off the bench, even from Morocco, to deal with. You know, yeah, he had that chance. You know, it's a bit of a half chance, but, you know, he doesn't have the pace to get into the positions he used to anymore. And yeah, I think it's going to be a kind of, you know, one final farewell contract for money, and then away you go.
Yeah, but he's not to blame for this, Keith, obviously, because he wasn't on the pitch. It wasn't him who was misfiring. Like, I think whoever was on commentary, but our co-coms was Kenny Cunningham. He said at one point he'd forgotten that Bernardo Silva was on the pitch. You know, he didn't have the impact. Gonzalo Ramos obviously got a hat trick. That was very unlikely to happen again. Fernandez was kind of stubbornly staying in the game, and João Felix seemed to be getting a lot of the ball. But like, you list off those players, like, it's ridiculous the attacking talent they have, and it just partly, was it them not clicking, or was it just simply that this Morocco team are just able to frustrate anyone?
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit of both. I think Morocco were obviously very good defensively. Like we said, only conceded the one goal so far in the tournament. But that being said, João Felix probably huffed and puffing. That'd be being kind to him. Bruno Fernandes, yeah, forgot he was on the pitch for most of it. Wasn't great. Bernardo Silva didn't make anything happen. Ruben Neves was poor. Octavio was poor. And then Ronaldo come on, and you're thinking, okay, they'll put maybe some quality in the box. Maybe he'll score a header. They lacked any penetration. They never got behind the Moroccans. And I know Morocco were playing a low block, but you can still threaten. You can still, you know, threaten to run in behind. But Morocco knew they're never going to get in behind us. They haven't got, and even if they do, we have the pace to go back at them. So look, at the Ronaldo one, it doesn't just fall on Ronaldo's feet. But the big one for me, I'm not sure if Fernando Santos has spoke about this, but João Cancelo on the bench. He's one of the best. He's probably one of, if not the best right back in the world, if you want to call him a right back or creative holding midfield player, whatever you want to call him. How he's on the bench is absolutely baffling to me. I just don't get it.
Bizarre. Because he's probably better than the right back and the left back, and as you say, the holding midfielder. He could play in 3 positions, and he hadn't started the last 2 games. Just like baffling.
Look,
really
Diego Dallo has played well for Portugal this World Cup. Don't get me wrong, Guerrero's doing okay. But when you've got one of the best left backs, best right backs, holding midfielders, creative midfielders, whatever you want to call them, you make space from it. It was like England were Foden. I know the other wingers were playing well, but when you've got somebody like that, you make space, you get them in. And for Fernando Santos not to get him in, it's such a glare, and obviously you'd play him. So there has to be something in the background for me. I'm not sure if it'll come out in the next few days or whatever, but João Cancelo has to be a starter.
Yeah, it was a very odd decision. Rob, there seems to be a real kind of people don't seem to care too much about potential fines or punishment for criticizing referees anymore. After last night's bonkers finale and aftermath to the Argentinian win over Holland on penalties, today you had Bruno Fernandes among and Pepe. Obviously, Pepe had to be involved. But Bruno Fernandes said of the referee, I don't know if they're going to give the cup to Argentina. I don't care. I'm going to say what I think and screw them. It's very strange that a referee from a team that whistles us, it's still in the cup. They clearly tilted the field against us. That's how the translation I'm reading anyway. So they seem to think there's some conspiracy and they seem to think that they are the only team that could stop Argentina from winning the World Cup. It's quite disrespectful to Morocco and obviously kind of potentially slanderous to the referee. And like, they're not the only ones. Like, obviously the Argentinians and the Argentinians somehow found fault with the referee last night, even though he was their 12th player. So like, it just, people don't seem to care anymore.
I mean, I think, in fairness, though, the referee the performance it was. I think the final count was 18 yellow cards and 1 red card
last night. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mean, it was a very strange performance in that, like, you know, he was booking everyone in sight once and then decided that no one else ever needed to be booked. There could have been 3 or 4 red cards. But yeah, there seems to be a bit of impunity with criticism. Look, Pepe, he's 39. He's not going to worry too much about getting a suspension from FIFA internationally. I'd be surprised if he turns for Portugal again. Fernandes, I suppose the heat of the moment, like, you know, you've gone out of the World Cup. You feel like you've been hard done by. Things are going to, you know, you haven't performed yourself. Things are going to be said. Yeah, I think it's, you know, in heated moments like that, you can perhaps understand and maybe not forgive. I'm sure, you know, the bans will come down eventually, but it's understandable, I think, you know.
Yeah, it's an odd one though. Like maybe it's the World Cup's in Qatar. It's at a strange time. People think they're kind of like it's just a very strange situation all around. So maybe they feel that there won't be any ramifications. But I would imagine from your career, you knew that if you said something like that in the media, you're gonna be in shit, aren't you?
Yeah, we were told how to manage interviews and stuff. You generally don't even really speak about the game, and that's why when you get current players on to talk about things, it's so bland because they can't really say anything. They can't bring the game into disrepute, I think, is what the wording is in contract. So I listened to the Argentinian goalkeeper's interview as well, Martinez. His was absolutely excellent, giving out about the referee last night in the Dutch and Argentinian game. But I have to say, I absolutely loved it when the penalty started and you could see the overhead camera and you could see the players giving each other variables going up to take the penalties. I thought it was brilliant to see a bit of needle, and I don't think it went over the top. There was a couple of tackles, a bit of argy-bargy here and there, but I don't think it went over the top. And I have to say, I really, really enjoyed it. It was a great game of football, and when you know two nations don't like each other and they're going at each other like that, I just sat back, put my feet up, and really, really enjoyed the game.
Yeah, and I think it was refreshing, Rob, as well, to kind of see that, you know, Leo Messi kind of has a personality and isn't like this like whiter than white kind of football evangelist. Like he was taunting the Dutch fans. He went over and gave Van Gaal an earful, and then my wife who speaks Spanish, but her Argentinian Spanish wouldn't be great. Her translation of what he was saying to Weghorst was go away you spanner, was basically what he was saying. But as Keith says, it was just so refreshing to see this. It was bedlam, and like the best player in the world was in the middle of it. It was fantastic.
And I think that's part of, you know, that's been one of the aspects of Argentina's performance at this World Cup. You know, Messi seems to have taken on a new leadership role. You know, he's not frightened to put himself out there and kind of get involved and get his head in and, you know, be the face of, no, we're not happy with this. And, you know, whereas in the past, he might have shied away from these things. He seems to be the genuine leader of this Argentinian squad now for the first time ever, perhaps. You know, I mean, the pressure was always on him to perform, as a player and as an individual, but now he really seems to have stepped up as a leader. And that's kind of, you're at the same stage of their career. You're looking at the contrast between him and Ronaldo, and they've been these two kind of head to head. Who's the best? When we've lived in a time when we've been blessed to have the two of them, but it's just so refreshing to see his career. It seems to enter a new era. He has stepped up and taken this leadership role that we haven't seen from him before.
Yeah. Well, look, I think we're probably not the semi-finals we predicted, but if we got the semi-finals we predicted, it would be a predictable World Cup, which is not what we want. So just for those of you maybe not altogether sure, it's Argentina-Croatia at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, and then it's France-Morocco at 7 p.m. on Wednesday. They'll both be live on RTE2 and the RTE player, and we'll be back on Monday to preview them. And I have to say, I'm already looking forward to them. The idea, Keith, of another 2 days now with no football is painful. We just got over 2 days with no football, and the 2 days we got has been phenomenal. It's I would say at times, I don't know how you feel, like the football, maybe the standard of the football hasn't always been at the highest, but the entertainment value and the drama has been second to none, particularly in these quarterfinals, I thought.
Yeah, look at the knockout stages have been brilliant. There's still a long way to go. We've got all the semis and then the final to go, but the quarters, finals have been really, really entertaining. Can't take your eyes out for a minute. The group stages, I don't often agree with Giovanni Infantino, but I do think it was the best group stage. As soon as Saudi Arabia beat Argentina, everybody's ears pricked up. They thought it could be the year of the underdog, and then Japan beat Germany. There's just been so many upsets along the way, and Morocco being in the semi-final, Croatia being there, and can you put it past Morocco or Croatia getting to the final and really upsetting it? It could be a World Cup for the underdog, which is brilliant for me. And so many people have said, "Wouldn't you love Messi to win it for Argentina?" I have to say, I wouldn't begrudge Luka Modric winning the World Cup, because that man's been at the top for so long. Never puts a foot out of trouble in terms of the media. Never in the limelight for any bad reasons, for bad publicity. Just a super player, and for so long he's been playing for us at the top level. If it was to lift it, you'd have to just say he deserved it.
Yeah. Well, good cases can be made for all the teams, you'd like to think. And just the final word, just Robbie, I saw a couple of comparisons to Turkey a couple of World Cups ago when they made it to the semi-final, but had shipped a lot of injuries. Roman Saiz went off for Morocco this evening, and if he's not fit, they're down. I think they're two as we speak. Their two first choice centre halves are gone, which is tough, because obviously they rely quite a lot on their centre halves, and they're two quality players. So you'd hope they get one or both of them back, because you'd like to see them, now that they've got to this stage, to get a fair crack at it.
Absolutely. And Saiz is such an important player for them. But I suppose it's just part of, that game of attrition they played. It's going to take that, where, when you're throwing yourself into so many tackles, when you're sprinting after everything, it's going to have that wear and tear, especially when the games are so close together. The only other thing I can think, is having watched the Morocco and Croatia, the first group game, the 0-0. I'm not sure we want another one of that. There's a lovely romance there, but that was a terrible game.
That's a good point. Careful what you wish for. All right. Thank you to Keith. Thank you to Rob, and thanks very much for listening. And as I said, we'll be back on Monday to preview the semi-finals. Thanks. Good luck. Bye.
Cheers.